welcome back to the Covenant Eyes podcast. We are back for part 2 of our interview today with Yamilexis Fernandez, and we're bringing in a special guest, somebody very special, near and dear to your heart, Yami. It is actually her husband, Jacob Pizarro. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Awesome. Okay, and Jacob is actually a youth ministry leader, so that makes for a powerful couple here. You guys are doing some amazing things. So, Jacob, take a minute and share with our listeners how the two of you met.
Yeah. So Yami has a really beautiful ministry / business. She has her own coaching company.
Nice.
And so basically with this coaching company is basically for the marketplace as well as to help add value to those who want to make an impact doing online ministry.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, I actually led a missions trip to South Africa for 1 month.
Okay.
And actually committed to actually be a missionary and a youth pastor in South Africa. Nice. So long story short, I made the commitment and I'm raising funds. And so I decided to join Yami's Impact Academy program. So that way I can kind of do ministry online overseas.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the door closed. And so praying, asking God to just guide me and lead me, he ended up opening another door to stay as a middle school Bible teacher.
Oh, wow.
But 2 months after the door closed, that's when I kind of reached out to Yami.
Nice.
And slid in her DM and we just connected. We just developed a friendship and we've been best friends ever since.
That's amazing. So it started off through a need because you were doing ministry and you needed to actually be able to do that online. And wow, it's amazing how the Lord works in fun, mysterious ways. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to bring you into the conversation because of your work in youth ministry. We were talking off screen a little bit about some of the philosophies that the two of you share in your home church and how important it is to reach the young people. Let's talk a little bit about that. So share with me just a little bit of, working with young people has got to be challenging these days because there's a lot coming at them. So how do you get their attention and how do you reach them?
Absolutely. So at my church, we have the Get There First initiative.
Okay.
And the heart behind it is basically this beautiful quote, and it's to the race to the heart of the next generation, the first one there wins.
Ooh, so good.
Yeah, it's so good. So even in West Palm Beach, that's kind of where we're from.
Yeah.
It's really distracting. They actually have just like billboards of strip clubs all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of distractions and they're trying to like push their agenda on this next generation and people.
Yeah.
What's very interesting is the Greek word for disciple is actually mathetes. And it simply means student or learner. And so the world, they're trying to teach us about sexual purity.
Right.
The world is trying to push their own perspectives on, what sex looks like and pornography and all that. And so what we've decided to do is, hey, we're not going to allow the world to disciple this next generation. And then we're going to try and correct. We're actually going to get there first. Nice. And so that's kind of the heart behind all of that. We just really want to be intentional and proactive to actually teach on what God's word says about all of this. And try to teach them younger. And so that's kind of like our approach. And it's literally bleeding from top down. Like this is from the lead pastor. He's sharing his vision on just making disciples and getting there first. And it bleeds into young adult ministry. It bleeds to youth ministry. And so, we've been doing that now for a while. I've actually hit 10 years of serving in youth ministry.
Wow.
And I'm also a middle school Bible teacher. Aww. And so I'm doing a lot of discipleship, encouraging students from the school side as well as the church side. And so that's kind of like what that discipleship looks like.
I love that. And I think it is so important that we do get to the young people because a lot of them, have similar stories to yours, a broken family or, maybe mom's gone or dad's not part of the picture. And these kids are, if they're on technology, the voices that are coming through technology are not always biblical. So I love that your church has just made that a commitment. Some churches, I've been to a few of these in my my past, I'm old, so I've been to a lot of churches over my life, but, where, kids, it's like, keep them quiet, and it's like, you send them off to nursery school. But we go to a church now where the pastor embodies like the whole family being together in church, and kids making noise. That's okay, because we want them there and learning and growing and investing in them. So I love that you guys are committed to that. So in your work, you probably have a lot of kids that are struggling with technology addictions, video game addictions, pornography exposure. How are you handling that when they come to you with those challenges and people on your team? I mean, how are you guys walking alongside of them?
Yeah. So it's actually really, it's tough, but it's also beautiful to see like God redeeming stories. I'm thinking about a student of mine. He's a 6th grader.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, dad kind of caught him not only watching pornography, but actually sending pornographic videos to his friends.
Oh, no.
And so in this role, the dad, on a Zoom with him, just completely just like devastated.
Oh, wow.
And, and the big thing is for him, he's processing with me is like, I had no idea what was going on. And so I think what I've tried to do, of course, walk them through that journey, but I'm really intentional on helping parents understand if you give your son or daughter an iPhone,
right?
And they're like 11, they're 12, they're 13.
Yeah.
And you don't have any parameters, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Doing youth ministry, a student mentioned a few years ago, there was a trend on who has like the biggest body count. And that's what was trending on Instagram. And people were putting their body count and they were glorifying it. Wow. And so I'm trying to talk to the dad and encourage him is like, hey, social media, they're actually going to push this. You look on the Explorer page, it's like all over. Yeah. And so what I like to use is this analogy of Alaskan hunters back in the day, how they used to hunt wolves. Okay. And basically Alaskan hunters, how they used to hunt wolves is they would just take a knife, they would splash fresh blood on this knife, and then they would put a sheet of ice on it, and then they would put another layer of ice, and then another splash of blood, and then another layer of ice. Basically just like envision this like blood popsicle.
Yeah.
And so then at the very end, Alaskan hunters, they would go ahead, they'll drizzle just fresh blood. And so when the wolf is, just roaming around, they're drawn to that fresh blood. Okay. And so they start licking. And then next thing you know, though, as they're licking through the sheet of ice and then the blood and then the ice, their tongue is getting numb. Right. And as they're going through, all the ice is melting. By the time they get to the actual dagger, that sword, that blade, it cuts through their tongue. And next thing you know, but their tongue is numb. And so they're actually killing themselves, thinking that they're actually feasting on prey. Wow. And next thing you know, they just drop dead without even realizing what was happening. Wow. And what I like to tell parents, when you give your kid an iPhone or a tablet or an iPad, and they might be, annoying, and you're at dinner and they're running around just serving, at a Christian school, an elementary and a middle school side. I've seen, just like they're rugrats, they're running around. But really what I've seen is just that. They're giving their children, an iPad, just sit quiet. Yeah. And they might not realize it, but when a kid is getting exposed to pornography, they see an ad or they see something on Instagram and they're getting addicted. Just like the wolf, they have no idea what's happening. Right. What 11-year-old is thinking about how detrimental pornography is. Right. And then they have their neighborhood friend that's also like, isn't this good and crazy and wild? And next thing you know, they get saved 10, 20 years down the line and they're wondering why it's so hard. And as you probably know, pornography, it damages just the prefrontal cortex of the brain, literally making it that much harder to find freedom. Yeah. And so what I like to just encourage parents of Proverbs 22, a prudent person foresees danger and then takes precaution. And so just like, maybe your son or daughter is in middle school or elementary school and you might not think that there might get exposed, but there will be a day, whether it's looking at a billboard, like I mentioned earlier, or looking at some ad, the day is going to come, where they will get that exposure, and you're going to have to really decide, I want to get there first.
Yeah.
I want to guide them first, and I want to help them. And you might, there might be a parent watching this and might be thinking, well, how do I do that? My kid is 6 years old, or how do I do this practically? I have a 9-year-old, without, sharing certain things. And something that I think would be fruitful is actually teaching them the art and skill of delayed gratification. And so, of course, you might not have like a porn talk with your 9-year-old, but if you're at Walmart or you're at the grocery store, and then, they're at the aisle, you're about to check out, they see a little candy, and they're screaming for it, instead of giving in, you can use this as like a coachable moment where you say, hey, you can have this candy bar, but after dinner is when you can have it. Instead of just getting them to just be quiet in that moment and stop the screaming, okay, buy it, the candy bar and give it to them right when they get in the car, is like, hey, having a candy bar, right? It's not the end of the world, it's not bad, but after dinner. And so I think that automatically being raised in a healthy home like this, by the time they get older, even if they want to go to, I don't know, vacation or Disney World, and they're like, we want to go now. And it's like, hey, we can go, but during summer or like 6 months out, then we
got to save for it. It's going to take some time.
Exactly.
Take out a home equity loan.
Right. Or if you have like a daughter wanting to buy, I don't know, a dress or something at the mall, it's like, hey, maybe, when we save a little bit of money, etc. And then as they're growing into young adulthood, they already have kind of just that self-discipline of, hey, not everything you need right now. And then coaching them, sex is God's idea. Sex is a beautiful thing. He just created it for marriage. And so that's my encouragement to parents, is kind of just helping them and teaching them in that way.
I love that. That's beautiful. And it's really like intentional parenting, and all of those teachable moments that you mentioned, I think are really valuable. One of the things that we encounter quite a bit is the unintentional exposure to pornography at young ages, with, parents that call into Covenant Eyes and, their child was just looking up something innocent and was exposed, right? And so even those conversations about pornography, they probably start even earlier than you would think, because of technology, because technology is exposing our kids so young. Are there any tools or resources that you point people to, or just coach them to use? Like, I remember when I had to sit down and talk to my kids about, sex and, our body parts and all those things. I had a lovely manual from, I think it was Focus on the Family, Dr. Dobson. Back in those days, it was a book. We didn't have phones. But it gave me some pointers on how to have these conversations. Are there any tools or resources that you guys point people to help prime parents to have these conversations? Because they can be hard, right? Especially if you didn't have a parent that did that for you.
Yeah. Brittany, I shared her.
Oh yeah, Brittany. Yes.
Brittany de la Mora, she's amazing. She has a ministry with her husband called Always Ministries.
Yeah.
They talk a lot about that. Actually talking to your kids, because she's she was in the adult porn industry and all of that. So she has a lot of resources on that topic.
Yeah.
Obviously, Covenant Eyes is amazing. Like, genuinely, I mean, I loved it. My husband's used it for years, still does.
Yep.
So I think it's important that you have technology. So like, you don't have an excuse. Like, you're like, I don't know how to do it. It's like, okay, you could literally Google it.
Right.
And there's so many resources out there. But I would even say just talking to like a pastor or somebody at your church in ministry that maybe has more wisdom or more knowledge than you and this topic. And Brittany's ministry is amazing. There's amazing ministries out there probably that I've never heard of, or we've never heard of, that you guys can probably find on Google. But talking to someone in church and getting advice and biblical wisdom from your pastor or leader is so crucial, because they may know your specific situation. I was introduced to porn at the age of 6.
Wow.
And I think like the stats now are like from 6 to like 10 years old.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. And so just don't think, I guess just don't think that it's not going to happen to your child.
Right.
Like, don't be so oblivious that you think like my child is never going to stumble on this, where you kind of over shelter them and you don't have any conversation.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice. Like, make sure that you're aware. Unfortunately, we were talking off camera about this. Like, they live in a digital age.
Yeah.
It is everywhere. It is literally everywhere, you know, and there's technology now that they even sell for kids that don't even have the internet on them, you can get. So there's a lot of tools out there being created for you. So do the hard work, do the research, because as a parent, your job is to protect your child.
Right.
And you cannot protect them from everything, but there are precautions that you can take to say, like, I love my child enough to do the hard work, to not just give them a tablet.
Yeah.
And just say, well, it is what it is. Like, I want to be able to say, I did my best, Lord, with what you've given me. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to ask pastors. I'm going to ask leaders that are wiser than me. But I'm also going to ask the Lord and say, you know, God, you've given me this mantle as a parent. God bless you with those kids. He chose you to be their parent. So ask the Lord for wisdom. And ask the Lord to protect their mind. And don't just use practical tools, but be an intercessor for your family.
Yes.
Get on your knees and pray.
Right.
For your kids. Pray that God will protect their minds. Pray that God will keep them. That you shared with me preventative grace. Share that. Pray that God will prevent them even from getting to those places. As you do the practical, like, go in the spirit, because Ephesians 6 says we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So the enemy has a plan for your son or daughter, but God does too. And as you wage war, like, we hear this all the time, like, there's nothing like mom's prayers or grandma's prayers or dad's prayers. As you're covering your child spiritually, praying for them, interceding on their behalf, and you're doing the practical, like, they're going to be way better off than the child that the parent does nothing and lets them walk into this world kind of like uncovered and exposed, and the enemy's gonna go after that child. You know,
he's gonna sense that weakness, that they're not prepared. That's so good. Did you want to add anything to that, or is that?
I just want to echo what you said, babe, on Covenant Eyes. And I know, obviously, this is the Covenant Eyes podcast.
Oh, sure.
But for me, growing up, I wish my parents would have kind of had, like, in our built-in in our homes, Covenant Eyes. And so, I just wanted to just encourage just some parents, even if you as parents don't struggle with pornography, having Covenant Eyes on. I mean, I've had Covenant Eyes since I think 2017 or 2018.
Oh, wow.
And I don't plan on like just,
it's a lifestyle now.
It's
in
lifestyle.
Our budget.
Yeah. It is in our budget, and I'm going to the grave with Covenant Eyes just in general. Great. And I would encourage parents to do the same.
I love that. And, you know, it's a great way as a parent to model, you know, this accountability lifestyle to your kids on what you do with your technology. I think it's great. I mean, in our family, we used it on all the devices, and it's a great tool to just model good behavior. Like, there's nothing to hide. We are being open and transparent about our usage so that we could teach that to our kids. So I love that you guys are going to keep, you know, that into your lives, even though you may not need it anymore. So, well, Yami, you have a book coming out, or it's out already?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was actually an ebook. I did a pre-order drop, and then honestly, Karen, I was not expecting it to do that well.
Oh, that's great.
And then it kind of like did really well. And then I was like, people kept asking me, they're like, can you please like launch it? So I'm in the process of getting it published. Yes.
That's amazing. What's the title of the book?
So currently we're in the process of getting that sorted out, because you have to get the copyright and all of it. God willing, it'll be called Worth the Wait.
Awesome.
But if it's not, you could just potentially find it.
And what is it specifically about for the listeners that might be intrigued and want to get their hands on it when it comes out?
Yeah, so literally, like, it's super simple. I was single for 7 years after I got saved, and I grew up in a Hispanic home where not Christian, so they believe in the concept of just living together before marriage. That is marriage, and it doesn't really matter who you sleep with. Kind of is what it is. And this is like very big in Latin culture in general. Just a lot of like sexual, like, you know, sin. And so as I was going through my singleness, I really struggled a lot.
Yeah.
I felt very alone, and I felt like, am I crazy? Do I have too high standards? Why am I going through this season? Why is it taking so long? I see friends that are younger than me that are getting married.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? So I went through a lot of like different challenges with sexual purity, like trying to be free from pornography, just a lot of different challenges. And so I wrote this book, honestly, we were on our honeymoon, and the Lord put this idea in my mind, like to write about our story and to create a little wedding guide. So our wedding, not to brag, it was literally so anointed. We went through a lot of spiritual warfare through our engagement season. It was rough. And we even had like worship during our reception.
That's great.
We didn't have like alcohol. We had a lot of like things that I stood by my convictions, even though most people in my life may not have agreed with those things.
Sure.
And so the book is honestly for men or women that are in that season that's like waiting. And it doesn't just mean you're single. Like you could literally be dating. And I talk about that in the book. Like there may be necessary endings.
Yeah.
Maybe this relationship is not from God. And so it's kind of like that weird season where you're like single, like you're not talking to anybody. You're struggling with contentment. You're literally lonely. You feel hidden from God, hidden by God. And then that season where you're like, I'm kind of going out there. Like I'm kind of dating. I don't really know what that looks like.
Okay.
And then even engagement, I kind of talk about the struggle. So I just take them through that, like my whole relationship journey.
It's kind of like a handbook for the whole experience.
The whole, just like a handbook, a guide. And my desire, my prayer through it all is for people to really sit and reflect. Like, what are my values? What do I desire in a relationship? Who am I? That it would be worthy of something like that or becoming that. And just praying and asking God to go to those areas that maybe we avoid, like porn. And he wrote a chapter in it on porn too. We mentioned covenant eyes.
That's great.
And stuff too. So just taking them through that journey and helping them through it. And then a little bonus part is a Christian wedding guide. So just practical like things for the actual wedding. But also how I prep myself spiritually and mentally, what prep we did for marriage.
Okay.
Like going to counseling.
Right.
And meeting with, our church and having people in our life like Brittany and Rich who mentored us and just different things like that to help younger generations.
I love that. And that's so needed. I mean, we don't see a lot of that out there. And I think young people, especially when they're in that season of singleness or dating, they need that guidebook. So I'm looking forward to that. Do you have any idea when that will be out or just
this year for sure?
Okay.
I literally just closed with a publishing.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm really excited. And so we're working on the editing, getting all that stuff done.
Great.
And but you guys can find out more info on it. It'll be on my website, which is Yamilexisfernandez.com, or on my Instagram. And I'll be updating through there.
Awesome. Well, we'll put the links in the show notes.
Yeah, because it may change. It may be Yamilexis Pizarro, but no, I'm kidding.
Yes,
that may take a while.
Awesome.
I need to get on that.
But you can add that to the book. It's like, how do you make the transition with the last name? I know.
Change your last name, guys.
I love that. Well, I love the two of you are just doing the work of the Lord and sharing, your vulnerability, your stories, your passion, your commitment. I am just so excited to see what God has for you guys in the future. So thank you so much for both coming on the show today. It's been awesome.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure.
Of course. Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in to segment 2 of our interview. We hope you enjoyed this. Definitely check out Yami's page. We'll put the link in the show notes so you can keep an eye out for that book. I think it's going to be a great resource. And Jacob, it has been such a joy to have you. And I love your philosophy. I love that story about the knife. I'm going to use that.
Oh, yeah.
That's
a good
great.
one.
I'll make sure I give you some credit for that. But that is a great, wow, what an analogy. Parents need to really latch onto that. So thanks, listeners. Take care. God bless. We'll see you next time.